if you're driving by, you see this house, 2,500 square feet on one piece of property, and right now it goes for 800,000, and you say, "I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy it for 800,000," and then you put a fence right down almost the middle where you give 2,500 over here, right? And now you have just that sleeve, right? Well, believe it or not, if you were to actually subdivide it, because now you can with condo rules, so you could actually sell that house, you'll probably still sell it for 790 to 800, even though you've cut half of the yard off.
Welcome to the Path to Passive podcast, where we talk about building wealth and empowering lifestyle through commercial real estate investing for tech professionals. I always wish that other tech professionals reaching financial freedom had documented their journey along the way, so I'm doing it for the rest of us. Join us as we explore stories, many failures, and lessons learned along the way. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. Hey, what if working harder isn't the answer, and the real advantage is learning how to design leverage into your life and investments? And that's exactly what we unpack today in this conversation. In this episode, I'm joined by Joe Edgar, an entrepreneur and investor with a unique perspective shaped by early real estate investing, experience in venture capital and public investment programs, and years spent building platforms that supports thousands of local businesses. We're going to talk about why Joe describes himself as the lazy entrepreneur and how that mindset actually leads to smart decisions. To talk about the difference between income, ownership, and leverage, and why high earners often confuse them, and how real estate and local businesses create durable, boring, and highly effective wealth. Of course, Joe talks about his platform called Loca and how important businesses are to not only your local community, but how they can serve all of the people that are looking for unique experiences as well. And of course, we're talking about venture capital and some of the lessons that he's learned along the way, including scale and where it doesn't translate in some areas for the individual investors. And so, who is this episode for? This episode is especially relevant for you if you're a high income professional or entrepreneur, investor looking to move beyond surface level strategies, and someone who wants their money working harder than their time. So, if you've ever thought, I'm doing well, but this still feels heavier than it should, this conversation will land for you. So if you're getting value from these conversations, please subscribe to the show, leave a review. It helps more people discover this podcast. And of course, if Joe's perspectives resonates with you, be sure to check his work out. All these links are included in the show notes. All right, let's get into the episode. Mr. Joe Edgar, thank you so much for being here today. You've got quite a bit of life experience, quite a bit of record, I would say. From this episode, I want to dive in and talk to you a little about how you went about buying your first property at 14, raising this venture capital fund, end up working for, a governor's office and putting together, these companies, organizations like Tenant Cloud and what you're doing today at Loca. And so I'm super excited to, hear a little more about this. And for all the listeners, can you please just give yourself an introduction on the way that you would explain about who you are, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. I would say I grew up on a reservation, so I'm a little loose and don't feel like I belong to where, as just the only white boy on town. But I refer to myself as super lazy. I'm always trying to find easier and faster ways not to do redundant work. And so it just happens to fit that that's great for entrepreneurism, because that's really what they are. They try to, find easier and faster ways to get out of doing lots of stuff. And that probably, sums me up in a nutshell. So.
Super lazy. When did you discover that you were super lazy and it in fact was a superpower?
So when I was probably like 6 or 7, I grew up, as I said, in a reservation. It's out in this, definitely out in the bush, out in the country. And my mother had planted all these trees, and I had to go and hold the hose and fill them. There's like this huge hole, so you'd have to fill it with water. And I would just take naps between each one, because you'd have to sit there for like 20 minutes each hole. And so eventually I realized, I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. If I just take all the hoses and I poke a hole in the hose, then I can fill them all, which it did work great. Now the hose became worthless after that, which didn't, do me too well. But yeah, from there I could just use the same hose, fill them up, and I was like, well, I'm done. I mean, sure. So that was one of my chores that was supposed to take me, 2 to 3 hours, and I'd be done in, a matter of minutes. But
right.
Turns
And then
out
you can
the hose is very expensive. So
sure. But I mean innovation, right?
exactly, exactly,
And if other people have that type of problem where they want to take naps in between, then surely you could market from there.
exactly, exactly. It sells itself. It's like, hey, are you underwater? You could be napping.
There you go, dude. I love it. Joe, talk to us about, let's get a little bit about, your more in that background. I'm really curious. You bought a property at 14. How did that happen? Because I know you were telling me that you're from the Pacific Northwest. I just was in Seattle there, visit some folks as well. But you also did some other, travels as well. You talked about living in Australia, and I know you were also we're both here in Austin. We're doing this, remote. Next time, I'll make sure we get an in studio so we can be face to face. But you've been around Oregon as well, et cetera. But talk to me about your first property at 14.
I mean, my parents had 13 kids,
Mm,
and so there were a lot of us. And when there's a lot of you, my father was a contractor, so he built houses, and my mother was a janitor at the local church in our small town. So your kids become your labor force. I
sure.
mean, from a very small age, I was like picking up wood, having to sweep floors, and create piles. To then, as you get a little older, you're climbing the walls, you're lifting them, you're putting on trusses, and you're doing the whole bit.
Yeah.
So I grew up around the idea and knowledge of ins and outs of how to build a house, how to build a barn, and
Mhm.
how to clean a building. And so those go rather well when it comes to remodels. And my parents had gotten into this whole idea of like fixing up houses, and they were listening to kind of this network marketing guy.
Sure.
So I'd grown up. They had bought one house and sort of, you know, fixed it up and done that. So by the time I was 14, I mean, I was very proficient in the ins and outs of all of it. So on our little town, Chiloquin, if anyone's listening, it's southern Oregon. We don't quite get the same rain that you would get in Seattle. We are on the other side of the Cascades, so we get kind of two seasons. It's either
Mm,
cold or hot. So,
yeah.
but and when I say prices for this town, you got to put it in this time frame. This is the late '80s, early '90s, and you could buy a house that was run down and trashed and unlivable for $10,000. So that's what I did. I put $2,000 I had saved up mowing lawns as a down payment,
Nice.
and I couldn't own a house because I was 14. You have to be 18 in the state of Oregon, sadly. So I'd convinced my father to do it. He was pretty excited to see his son being ambitious, so he was more than
Sure.
happy to take the money and put it down. And then I made a deal that my first payment wouldn't be due for 90 days. So 2000 down, 90 days
Hmm.
for the first payment. And I just cranked it out. I convinced the local hardware store, really is under my father's name, that, can I borrow some stuff? And they're used to lending credit to everyone in town. That's basically how a small local operation works.
Hmm.
They didn't think I was going to charge up like $10,000 though, but which is what I ended up doing. So I put about 10,000 into it, and I just worked days and nights cranking this thing out. And we got it done in about 45 days and
Nice.
sold it for 45 with 5,000 down.
Very cool.
And took that. So I had a little leverage on the sense that I wasn't able to pay off all of my supplies, but I
Hmm.
took that and I bought two more. And one of those came out in cash, and that's how I ultimately paid everybody back. But that I was really creating basically a revenue stream,
Yeah.
this passive income that came from there.
And using those skills, you're talking about cranking out, doing all the repairs on
Yeah,
it, like
everything. And that's
fully, right?
electrical, that's plumbing, carpet, tape and texture, painting. I mean, it adds up, but you realize we are, in the software world, we call it a full stack. So I was a full stack contractor. You got to learn to do it all. So
And everything was up to code, right?
I imagine, yes, just because actually we're what, 30 years past the time. So I imagine that house has gone through at least two more cycles of being, remodeled and done. But
And
yeah,
always
it's
up to code.
I mean, remodels are interesting when you say up to code. If you build a new house, it's required to be up to code. When you remodel, there's so many things you can do that you're not really touching any code. Like putting on a new roof, you don't need, a permit or change anything. You're just putting on a new roof. When you change, from a paneling to sheetrock, you're going to do it. So the only places I think I would have been slightly in trouble is the electrical.
Yeah, sure.
I know on the first one we added a wall, and so we added some electrical panels on that wall. But for the most part, everyone knows remodels. You can kind of do them for the most part without much. Now I have had some I did later that they were completely burned, and I did sort of trick the system in that one where they're totally burned out on the inside. So I had to get new electrical panels. So I got permits for the panels so I could get the breakers in and get it all in. And then I stopped and I just connected them. So by the time anybody came out there, they wouldn't have remembered it was burned. They're just like, well, there's panels. Yeah, of course they were connected. But
yeah,
it was supposed to be like a one outlet connection, but they're going to let you choose the whole thing. So.
But you learn stuff too, right?
Yeah, definitely. And, you learn the hard way on some of this electrical stuff. I used to, my father was an electrician, but he'd kind of known the basics. So I really had to pick up and figure it out from there. So they had this old, booklet that I would read how to wire a three-way switch. And there's like 3 different ways to do a three-way switch or something like that. But you do get down to the old school. And I was a kid, so it was kind of fun to like what's hot and what's not. And when you do remodels, that is a lot of the problem is you don't want to shut it all down. You're just trying to find it. So I've definitely, sent more bolts through my heart than I probably ever should have. I did learn I should probably do it with like 2 fingers instead of the side fingers so it doesn't go through the heart, but it takes a little while. So.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't see that, what he did was Joe licked both of his fingers and he and he clamped down on this imaginary wire. So yeah, we've got, I believe what we call that in the software world, Joe, is a service event.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly. You never release on Monday because it goes live. So yeah, that's very yeah. I mean, I have had one of the worst things I had is I bought a house. I was under 18 at the time. I must have been like 16 or 17. And I was jacking up this house and it had been built in 4 different sections. And so I crawled, I was having to lift it to put the foundation on. And so I was crawling between the joists just because that's all I could fit. And you'd have these pump jacks and you'd like lift it up in different sections as it goes up. And one of the pump jacks turned sideways and popped out. The whole house fell on me. And that's worse, where I was literally pinched down, head pinched. And luckily I was between the joists. So my arms were actually pinched in front of me. Yeah. And so luckily I could kind of wiggle out. So I wasn't harmed at all, but it's kind of a scary idea when you're like, pinched against the ground, and I did have like little nails poking me in the back from the floorboard. So it probably took me 10 minutes to kind of wiggle. Right. You're like wiggle backwards, and nobody else is there. So yeah, it's definitely a dangerous, not very rewarded career path.
And that's when we learned the buddy system, right?
Yeah, maybe that. I don't know if the buddy system would have this. My buddy would have just said, "The house fell on you. It's over." So, I mean. Yeah, that was just luck on many fronts. So.
It sounds like you definitely got some stories, man. I look forward to those. I wanted to. So we picked up the first house. You leveraged your skills, the skills that you had from poking holes and in hoses, and the innovation along the way from full stack contractor to really doing a lot of doors, over 1,000 doors. But you've also went and spent some time in the Australian outback with the Aboriginal people. And I was looking at this, and I was listening to some other podcasts and stuff for you as well, and trying to think like, how does this timeline go? So how did we get to these doors? But also, where does hanging out with the Aboriginal people fit in this?
Luckily, it does fit. I mean, it was a fantastic time. But after, I'd been buying a lot of these homes, and it was really about passive income. I learned that, basically the more of these you do and the less you do to them, you can maybe even a small amount, you can create a lot of passive income.
The more
So
naps you can take too, right?
exactly, that's exactly right. So the lazier I could be if I just put a little more effort in now. So it's basically a life annuity, right, on time. I'll put in a little bit now, but I hope to basically just sit back and absorb the juice later for a good nap.
Dig it.
So my brother had served a mission in Brazil. So when I was 17, he wanted to go back. So we had started a business in Brazil building, basically, instead of chilogos, we'd use madeira, we'd use wood. It's very common in South America to make a brick house, but they have all the resources there. So we're like, why not build an American style home? So we had started that until we were still going. But when I turned 19, I decided I'm going to go and do kind of the same thing. So I went to Australia, and I started off in Adelaide, which, if you're familiar with Australia, I'll put my hand out right here, and this little part they call the armpit of Australia is Adelaide.
Yep.
And so I started off in the city of Adelaide. It's oddly enough Austin's sister city, or it was for a while. I think Austin's outgrown it, so we had to find a new sister city, but it was for a while. And really great. But then from there, I ended up going up to Port Augusta and then to Kubapiti, which are all out in the outback bush. And lots of Aboriginal camps. And what
is that like central,
or is that very central? Kubapiti is not quite the middle. Alice Springs would really where you'd say the central, but it's really the south to the north, kind of that whole central area. Very deserty, dry rock. Kubapiti, which gets 50 degrees Celsius. That's like 130. And very arid, but lots of opal. So it's an opal mine. So you have lots of Aboriginals out there, kangaroos, and wild fun times. And then all the way through there, we'd move around and basically just work with Aboriginals. It's kind of a special opportunity because there's lots of camps out there, and I grew up on a reservation, so no relation in it, just interesting to compare. And being invited to a lot of these Aboriginal camps, as a missionary, they would invite you in as a white person, but none of the locals have ever been on there or been allowed to. So you really get to go and hang out with Aboriginals and their native culture. And there's so many variation tribes and cultures now as you go up. Some have various dot paintings. There's those that do the boomerang, as we know around, some that use a nola, and we blend them all into one big Aboriginal, but you find out they're all tribes and different cultures. So yeah, fascinating, amazing time to really learn what the value of the dollar isn't. There's in their culture, there's not a lot of ownership. You are a collective communal. And so it was definitely interesting to experience as a 19-year-old and kind of comparing it. I like to joke that my ancestors are mostly from Scotland, but I wouldn't really know that. One of us lost Americans that aren't really tied to much culture. So growing up on a reservation, being a white boy, it was really easy to feel like you didn't have a culture and you're kind of left out, but still embraced by the community. But I'm always kind of like, but it's obvious this isn't my culture, but I'll still go to every powwow and I still, embrace because that's my local culture. So to go to Australia and see the same thing, it was even more interesting that here is a rich culture that goes back thousands of years. Some say it's the longest living existing culture because Aboriginals were nomads and there was nowhere else to go. So easy to keep the culture around. So
contained for sure.
But it was, just to absorb and learn so many different things about the, culture and be part of those people. Friendships and, what you consider as family. So they have an adoption thing. So I have an Aboriginal name, if you will. And so just to have that is just amazing, and to, learn about the different things. They have a story. Ayers Rock, as you might know it, is known as Urulu. And Urulu, if you break down what it is to the Aboriginal culture, it's funny. They won't climb this rock, but they'll let you pay to climb it. So it's partially explains a little bit about the culture, but it's sacred because it is the rainbow serpent. And you break down the story, and they have a story that's very similar to the Christian's creation story. So there's the rainbow serpent, and it's basically Satan. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say it's Satan. They don't see it as Satan at all.
Right.
But it's there's these two serpents that get in a fight and are part of creation. So learning culture and understanding that was just fascinating. I mean, it's lots of stuff to whirl around. So.
Lots of perspective, life perspective comes from that richness of culture too. And like you're saying, at 19, coming from that Indian reservation, and all those experiences through that, I mean, also see that there's a big world out there, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the unique things I never thought about until you said that, and I said I was lazy, is the Aboriginals have a great perspective. They don't, Americans, we have this weird, it's even beyond Americans, right? It's everyone. I talk to so many people who always are asking questions like, oh, how can I get out of debt? How can I build, this? And how do I think of like savings? And it's so funny because to me, it's like basic. If you have an income, live under your means and start saving as much as you can, because that just helps you grow to what you're trying to get to faster, right? There's just common, or make as much as you can and get there, get passive income so you can grow there. Those are just seem logical to me, right?
Fundamentals.
But
Yeah.
what really happens to most people is they make a little money, they buy a bigger house, more expensive car, fancier clothes, and then they're like even more in debt, like, oh man, how do I get passive? How do I get ahead? And then they make a little more money and they spend and get a little nicer house and a
Right.
much bigger car. And
Cycles
so
that
as
way.
they go, instead of like going back to where they started and saying, hey, I should create something that I don't have to work, I should be lazy and let my money do all the work. Instead of thinking that way, they continuously run the rat race and get harder and harder. And Aboriginals their culture is so good about things that lack vanity. So for them, it's really the basics. If you were to even try to explain, and the younger people, it definitely was changing. And this was, I know, 20 years ago. So it's probably changed a lot. And on the reservations, the same thing. I mean, there's ways that they get money, and the younger kids, when they learn that they can buy fancy cars and do fancy things,
right,
they get lost. But for the main culture, it really is about absorbing and enjoying the moment now. Like this is what's amazing is that. And so I think we could all learn from that we don't need a fancy car, we don't need more expensive house. There's really basics, and if we can learn to embrace these basics, it's actually some of our best sources of building passive income. It's just get down to the basics. You don't need a fancy car. There's nothing to be based on it. Get a car that's paid off, that's a beater upper, and it works just the same. You're going to get there. So I was just talking to someone the other day. I haven't bought a pair of clothes in I don't know how long, like decades. All of them are like tech swag that companies have given me. I think we all can get some of that. It's like we should all be just wearing swag. There's so many clothes being handed out for free that
sure.
It's silly that people are paying for it. Nonetheless, paying
a lot.
So
yeah. Well, it's interesting that we have this comparison. There's a lot of themes in our conversation here too. I'm definitely keeping the the lazy one, and letting your money work harder for you, which sounds like an overplayed clicheism at this point. But I think the taking that real connectedness to the story into that culture is kind of like a through line, which is why I'm talking about these different themes here, is like kind of sets a foundation for the question here, I think, which is, yeah, absolutely. Don't buy more. God, there's a different way to say this, but don't keep having your your quote unquote lifestyle go past what your income is, type of thing. Like you said, fundamentals, right? The swag thing, obviously, right? but at the same point, you did, University of Oregon. You're here in Texas now, University, Austin, and MBA at Cornell. So there's don't go live quote unquote past your means, or even defined means, right? And have your income earn more than you, but at the same time, stay hungry or whatever. What keeps you continuing to want to learn and do things was how I'm juxtaposing across this.
Well, to help sum up, one of my investors once told me, he said, a paycheck is the worst thing for an entrepreneur. Nothing kills an entrepreneur like a paycheck. It takes away that hunger. You now become like, oh, I have this paycheck. I'm secure to this limit. And that hunger, that need is a lot of where innovation really happens.
So talk to me about how you've had some of those experiences. Like has it just been not having a paycheck that's like, I just got to keep going? Surely there's more than that too, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely being up on a wall that forces you to figure something out. And in the entrepreneurial world, I mean, on the reservation, I say everyone's an entrepreneur because we're all poor. I mean, we had 13 kids. We had to go garden to survive. We would go and help this guy buck hay, and he'd give our family a cow, and we freeze the beef. Right? We lived great, but it was because we figured out a way to survive. And anyone out in the country understands what I'm talking about. You do a lot for your neighbors. You work together because there's not a lot of money to go around, so you use what resources you have. And in my case, when I was young, we had a lot of labor. There were 15 of us, right? So we could go and do lots of things. We're all contractors of sorts, so we could build and do. So we use that to the best of our ability. So everyone's an entrepreneur. So then you're like, all right, entrepreneur means survival. That's trying to figure out a puzzle, right? You have an issue and you're trying to sort out a way to survive. Then you advance in the world of entrepreneurship where you say, okay, well, I'm either a lifestyle entrepreneur, and that is someone who's going to has a customer, they're going to supply a service, and they're like, I really love it. This is great. It supports my lifestyle.
Sure.
Everything is good, right? And then you have these other entrepreneurs that are lazy. And they're what I just happen to fall into. Definitely no exception. I think there's a lot of us. And the definition of these lazy entrepreneurs is it has to scale. And the scalability means you cannot be a requirement in that business. If you leave the business and it falls apart, it's lifestyle. It's just there to support your lifestyle because it's not made to scale because you built it around you. So you have to build a business that doesn't require you, that can scale no matter where you are. And tech was a great place. It just naturally was calling to me because tech just has so many different ways to scale. You can build a lot of software tools, and no matter where you are, someone can use it. And it operates on its own, and you can build lots of agents into it. So this just draws lazy people. I mean, everything about it is like, yes, go and get involved in there. So that's where I was naturally just drawn to learn, to figure out a lot of the ways to, make things kind of be efficient that I could do once and not have to reduce it. But then what I did, everybody could do, right? Because I already built it. So now it's like, hey, you can use this. It's repeatable, and that makes it scale. So I forget the original question, but that's really those two entrepreneurs are, and they're both great entrepreneurs. There's no question. I don't shame on. In fact, entrepreneurs that can stand up and say I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur, I have more respect for them. Because I think a lot want to be kind of the lazy entrepreneur. I don't know why. It's not something to thrive for. But being a lifetime entrepreneur is great. 95% of the businesses in this country are those mom and pop type stuff. And that's what Loca is trying to help. Loca is trying to build them a way, to get past a lot of this digital marketing and connecting with customers. And so it's a great group. And so standing up to say I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur, it works. Is great. And the whole core that you're trying to do with your business is you're trying to make something be more efficient, and that is your time or your money.
Yeah. Tell me about Loca. I think there's questions I'll ask about this, but I know it's something you're passionate about and you're doing right now. So, and it solves a problem. It's a huge problem, and no doubt in an extremely lazy and efficient way. So,
So the local small business, it started because I would travel with my kids around Texas, and we'd go check out different. I don't know if there's a show down here called Day Tripper. Have you ever seen it?
Haven't seen it.
No, it's on PBS. It's a funny show. The guy's hilarious, but it's a local show. Nobody's gonna watch it outside of here. But he takes these little day trips and he tells you all about all the local stuff. They only do local stuff. So. And he has a little site where you can go do it. So we kind of followed that. We go to these little towns, check it out. And you find out like breakfast places, they're extinct. Like you cannot go anywhere in Texas and find a breakfast place anymore that isn't like Cracker Barrel, is the one that Texas seems to be predominant. But McDonald's is trying to pitch. I mean, the chains have taken over breakfast. You can still find lunch and dinner, sort of. I mean, there's the barbecue joints that are out there and things like that. So you can still find those, luckily. But they're a dying breed, and it's getting harder and harder. And part of that happened. Marketing all used to be local. So you think of any marketing, and it was the big companies trying to pay to get into your local marketing. So newspapers, television was all local, radio was all local, flyers and mailers were local. All of that was something that was done local that big ones got into. Digital marketing upended the entire world.
Totally.
All of a sudden, mail's gone, television's gone, radio's gone, all of them just gone. And the only way for local businesses now to get any of our attention is through digital marketing. And digital marketing is built for the big chains. So now the big chains are like loving it because they're just like, man, this is great. This is made. If I'm Starbucks, I've got 100 locations just in your city, not to mention thousands all over the country. Yeah. So I just want one message that I can distribute to everybody.
It's code at scale.
Exactly. Right. They are the ones that, get these economies, that $1 billion budgets. But if you're local, now you have to compete on what used to be made for you. So you're like, okay, well, now I have to be a master in social marketing. I got to be an influencer. Then I got to create all this content. Then I got to pay to promote it. So, and I got to create sales. So by the end, it all adds up to try to get our attention to do anything because you got to pay to promote it and, get it out there. So this is where, if you really look at what has happened, it helped it explains. If you think of Starbucks, Chipotle, McDonald's, these are three great ones because Starbucks accredits almost 65% of their revenue through their rewards app now. McDonald's had 20% growth through their rewards app, and Chipotle is seeing the same. So their rewards app is now the king. In fact, Starbucks, their rewards app was even considered to be like a bank, one of the biggest digital banks. Right?
Buy in, right?
And exactly. You're buying the gift card and they're just holding cash. Yeah. So what do they get from an app? They get three things. They get your loyalty, right? So they're building this kind of rewards program that they do something. All that leads to what? A point of sale. So it is a place to buy something, and they have rewards to try to incentivize you to buy something. Okay. The second one, they get your data. Like you're signing up for something. They now know about their customer, which that's what they're trying to create products for. They're trying to learn about their customers, right? So they get insight. And then point of sale, they get your data, and they get, what's the third one? My mind is drawing a blank. It'll come to me in a second as I explain what we're trying to offer to Loca. For local small businesses, you can still get a white label version. Like Toast offers a white label app, right?
Yep.
But if you do it, nobody wants, like just in Austin, there's 200 multinational corporations like these Starbucks, McDonald's. There's 48,000 local small businesses. We as consumers do not want 48,000 apps. So the white label app, it's a fall into place. You get the points, you get the data, and you get the point of sale. So I guess it's those three. So you get all those, but we don't want 40,000 apps as consumers. So it's a kind of a no-brainer. Like it just stops, right? So what Loca does is bring everybody together. You get one app. We had to figure out all the reward system because, Starbucks and United and all them, they can run on these weird point systems that none of us understand to begin with.
Sure.
But because we just keep using it, we're like, well, eventually it says I get something. None of it makes any sense to us. We have no idea. Carry the 2, divide by 7, add your birthday and your mother's, favorite dog's name. And somehow that equates to us getting something free. We have no idea. So on Loca, we experimented with a lot of things, and we said, we're just going to make it all cash. So they're all cash rewards. So you can go and create content for a local business and get paid per view cash. So your content, this is saving the business a lot of time that they would have to go create authentic content. They don't even know how to or the time to do it. Now you can do it, share it with your friends. It's a referral, so you get paid for that as well. If you go and shop stuff there, the average cost of acquiring a customer for a restaurant is between $35 and $65 to get you in the first time. And most tickets, for your sale are around 20. Yeah. So they lose a lot on their first one. So on Loca, you can actually get a cash reward to walk in the first time. Saves you get the cash instead of Google and Facebook. and the business gets customer at a lower price for the cap. So sometimes you can find $5, $10 a cash reward to go and buy something, no minimum purchase. Buy something the first time, upload the receipt. I'll give it now that I've given some background. I'll explain what it is. It's one easy to use reward app for all local businesses. It gives every local business a point of sale, so you can buy from them. You can see their menu. You can find out where they are, all the information about the business, their locations. You're willing to share some basic information with them because now you're getting paid cash rewards. And so it's a point of sale. You get the cash rewards, and it is this tool now, so you can find lots of businesses and everywhere. So if you go on Loca, you're going to find all the local businesses. We really don't add any of the large ones. They got their own app. But if you're a single location, I mean, it's really kind of the ant theory. It's if you all work together, you're pretty powerful, and that's the name of the game. So where we vary from like a Starbucks and McDonald's is on Loca. You can now find new customers. So you can actually see potential customers. And so if you're a business, not only, I mean, you want all your customers on there because you now have a way to communicate with them. That's the third one is communication. So on Starbucks, they can send you a notification. They can send you information. And then a lot of the small ones, you have to do texting and email. So with Loca, you now have those same exact tools. You can reach your customer. So you don't have to text them an email and bother them. And it runs itself. It's automatically going to keep them up to date. People are creating content for your business. You're now promoting that content so everybody can see it. And that could be everything from like a video of a burrito, and you post it and it promotes. So yeah, and content can be anything. I mean, there's some young kids who are making great commercials for local businesses, and they're doing it with cardboard and spending a lot of time, and they're great to watch. So real easy, but it's local content created for the business, of which then is promoted out. But then there's a lot of other stuff. We've gamified it now, so you can do quests, and that means you can go and do various things for local businesses and earn more cash rewards. Everything's cash. You withdraw with your bank or your Venmo, really easy. And so it's super simple, all local businesses, and lots of stuff you can do to earn cash.
Got it. So when you're talking about creating the content, what you're really talking about is if you were to, I guess it'd be kind of two different avatars or for this, but one is if you go to the restaurant, it's like post the picture or the whatever, the video for it.
Everybody's taking pictures of their food now.
Got it. So UGC, user-generated content, that perspective, which is true. So I have to ask this because, I think others are thinking about this too, is so how is this different than something like a Yelp as an example?
Yeah. So Yelp, the reason you're going on Yelp is you're trying to read reviews. You're trying to find out like what it is. We found there are three basic ways that if you're tasked with either your date night tonight or your buddies get together, like if you're tasked with that tonight, then you're going to take three routes, right? There's three different personas that do this. You start with reading. That could be reviews.
Sure.
This would be like Yelp would be the dominant one, right? So you're one type of persona. Then the second one is you're going to look at the map. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to go on Google Maps because I'm here and I got to find something local. So I'm just going to hit like restaurants or something around this vicinity, right? So you're location based, right? Third one, you're going to go to social and you're going to look at pictures. So of those three, those who look at pictures never read. Those who look at maps don't read. They'll look at a rating, but all three of them end up looking at pictures and videos. So that's where everyone ends. And if you started there, you just stay there. And if you didn't start there, you get there. So everyone looks at pictures and videos. It turns out, if I were to show you, as we research this, if I were to tell you in advance, like here's the Yelp rating, here's some stuff that said, here's the Google rating, here's some stuff that said, and we give you as much of the negative side as we can. And then I show you a video of something that looks great. You ignore the ratings. All of a sudden, you don't care. And we learned a lot. Like local small businesses just get beat up because they can't afford to pay people to go create all these fake Yelps. And Google and Yelp have both been busted in this now, that not only do they push you up on rankings for the positive ratings that you have been told, but then you can also pay lots of people to go put them out there unauthentically anyways. So this rating system sort of got created, and now we all think, like, I've had someone tell me, I don't do anything that's lower than a 4. I'm like, what does that even mean?
I
Like,
know.
what does it mean? And as soon as you see a video that's something that looks good, you're like, I'll be the judge. I'll try it.
Yes.
So there's a world of ratings. That's Yelp and Google. We're not in the rating and review industry. We are in the recommendation industry.
Right.
And recommendations are, you only give a recommendation if you like it. So, you're not going to find anything negative on there. It is 100% people have put on it are something they've recommended. And when they recommend it, they're going to send it. So you could send it by text, email. You can pass on any one of those ads that were created by anyone, including yourself. You can post it on Instagram. You can post it on TikTok. So you can promote something that you recommend. And that's really all it is. You become the recommend. And from there, we don't, there's no way you can leave reviews or anything like that. You're 100% recommending local small business. If you don't like it, don't recommend it.
Yeah. And that's a good little network marketing, psychology of it too.
Well,
right?
what's nice, because you said the UGC piece, it is UGC, but what makes us different and why it's so important for local small business? If I'm an influencer and I have 1 million followers, I'm useless to any local business because 80% of my customers live within a 4-mile radius. And so 1 million followers all over the world is going to help me at all. Right. So if you really look, and that's to show you the power of digital marketing, that it's such a reach. The phone brought us all closer together, but it made our local environment farther away. Now, if you're an everyday person like me who has, I don't know, I think my Instagram followers are like 30. And all of them are my friends, my family that all live, exactly, my neighbors. They all live right around me. And so instead of the, influencers kind of go down, you think about it as like a nano influencer.
Sure.
Those with only 10 or 20 followers are the golden goose, because if they're recommending something, it's everyone most likely within that 4-mile radius. That's actually who you want. You don't want someone with 1 million followers if you're a local business. If you're trying to sell shoes, yes, you want the 1 million followers, because consumer products, you can ship them anywhere. Local businesses aren't that. They are trying to penetrate that 4-mile radius. And so finding those everyday people, which makes up like 95% of the population, right? Most of us are the small followers, non-influencer base, but we are influencers. Everyone's an influencer within their own ecosystem. And so that's really the idea, is to penetrate that local market, to help local businesses the best you can. And so what's nice is, as you get on there and you're doing this, you realize we're cutting out Google and Facebook, and we're making the customer them. The customer becomes Google and Facebook, and they get paid for it. And so all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm a patron. I can go and, be a patron to all these local businesses, but now I earn cash, which lowers the price for me, and it lowers the cost for the local business. So it's an attempt to try to get, control of the digital world and get the reins back to the local business.
Yeah. And what's kind of cool is there's kind of a built-in moat to it just on the model itself. Right. And it's not like, and about this in general, it's like, sure, we're talking about this quote unquote business, but I love, like, it's service to the people, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's, it's not only service to the people, but finding where, quote unquote, to use the terminology, right? Where does the niche fit, Joe? So it's like, well, how do we serve them, right?
Well, what's weird is if you think through, this is where the segue between our last two conversations come together, because you're like, well, how did you get into this from that? And there is nothing more local than where you live.
Yeah.
I built property management software, so I worked with rentals. That is the most local business you can get, is rentals. So lo and behold, I had to figure out a way, as I built Tenant Cloud and sold it and went through lots of iterations, to say, how can I work with these local businesses to get access to a lot of these tenants and landlords? And that's honestly our next piece. So we're about to launch within this next year. You soon will be able to pay rent and utilities and get cash rewards. And so that'll be a tool that's brought to local landlords as we step more into that market to really assist. You'll find out local businesses are the lifeblood of every piece of real estate out there. If you draw a map and you just pull up any Google map and you draw a random circle, you will see two things in those: single family rentals, which include duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. They make up the majority of them. And you're going to see all these local small businesses. So there's these strip malls, and they, break down. There's karate or yoga.
Yeah.
So there's like fitness. There's retail shop with the soaps and the sewing stuff. And then you have restaurants galore, which include bars, coffee shops, everything. And then you have beauty, which is like barber shops, nail shops. I mean, those are everywhere. Those are your 48,000 in Austin, but there's 43 million of them all over the country. And so you put those together, they were made to be together. It's digital marketing that separated them and made these separate industries, but they should, be together. And so that's really where we're going, is we had to be able to figure out a way to solve this basic part with Loca, where, how can we reward consumers? How can we really help them be ingrained and feel like, because we surveyed people and we asked them various questions, but we came out with 3 interesting answers about local small business. Almost 100% want to support local business. And I imagine, because it was like 99.7, but I imagine that 0.3 was just people not understanding the question. I don't know. But almost everybody says they want to support local businesses. They say the reason they don't know where to find them, which is strange because they're everywhere, right? But when we broke that down, it's like, well, you don't know where to find them. And it's really, if you say Walmart, you expect Walmart to be the same everywhere you go. If you say Starbucks, you just expect it to be the same. So it's really, you don't know what to expect. And that's kind of the where to find it. So they didn't know where to find it. They didn't know what to expect, and they think it's expensive. And those are the 3 things we really targeted for. Is app, easy to find. You can now look at all the experiences, so you can see everyone else's ads they're putting on, and you can watch all these videos of what it's like. And then you're getting cash rewards. And so it really helps with, the cost or what you think it's expensive. But we're putting the menu out there. We're making it as much of an expectable experience on the app. But you find more and more people, they don't, Starbucks, it's homogenous. If you've been to one, you've been to all of them. I mean, how boring is life? And these local small businesses, they give you a unique experience for every single one you walk in. I want a coffee mug that's half broken and glued together with the wrong handle. That's me. I want tables and chairs that don't match and wiggle. I mean, nothing says more mom and pop to me than that. And so that experience is unique, and every local business can give you this unique experience that you can only have in their place of business anywhere else in the world. And that's what they really offer, unlike this homogenous, boring, cookie factor.
What research did you find, and what was the thinking? I'll say, what was the thinking on stuff like people who are concerned about the uncertainty of what the experience actually is based on the pictures?
I mean, that's always the case, right? Because one, now you're talking about, we went and looked at the reviews and compared reviews, and then we show them like a different experience, and like, well, I don't even care about reviews. Now it seems interesting. I'll go check it out. Or that looks really delicious. Checks it out, right? So truth is, someone's going to go and try it. And when you read a review, let's say there is a burrito, right? And I'm clearly, my son went out to go get us breakfast tacos. So you see where my mind is right now. So
they're good.
I'm about, I'm about 20 minutes away from my breakfast taco. But let's say they go and get this breakfast taco. If you put 10 people in a room and you bring them the most amazing breakfast taco, right? Well, you're going to have some of them where like, it's just not my favorite.
Sure.
Right? Because they're going to be like, well, my mom made it with a corn tortilla, or, I like this weird other sausage, or, or I like the egg salted
as I like it.
Exactly. It's not as oily, or it's too dry, right? So so when you read a review, somehow you're disassociating the fact that there's going to be all kinds of ranges of what someone enjoys and what someone doesn't enjoy. And that's what's weird, is these ratings, we just think that there's only one way to score everything, and all of us are homogeneously the same. Sure. And that's what's weird, is when you actually see a video, the reason your mind says, oh, I don't care about ratings anymore, is because you become the judge. And you're saying like, oh, that does look like something I would eat. And I'm very weird to my kids. My kids are more like, no, it says it's bad. And they'll be like, oh, it tastes bad. I'm like, well, that's awesome. That's really good. So I find that I will eat almost anything for sure to try it, but we find that our palates are not equivalent. So I will definitely jump into more things, but that's really it. It allows you to go there. And you now went there. And so if you didn't like it, you're like, okay, I'm not creating an ad. I'm not promoting it. But you'll find there's so many people, places they go, they're promoting stuff they like. And so that's what's great is you're creating something that is more tailored to other people who are like you.
Right. Okay.
That will stand out. So in other words, I'm going to create something and I'm going to talk about what it is. So if I'm like, you got to try this taco, it's so moist and wet. So now when you're looking at it, someone who likes moist and wet tacos, they're like, oh, I get this. Yeah, I'm going there. Right. So you have a better way of finding something you like local than if you're reading this weird Yelp ratings and review or just keeping it stagnant. So
and it becomes a micro marketing because there's always going to be a segment of those restaurants or whatever who like just like you're talking about is for those type of people and their taste buds.
Exactly.
There's something for everyone's kind of weird type of
that's why local business is so great is they are trying to serve so many different niches. And instead of us having to fit into Starbucks and McDonald's think we are, we should be looking to local to where, real customization and variation is. And it's, there's so much to be offered that people don't know because they're constantly, right now they only look at what is being fed to them in digital marketing. Guess who's paying to feed it? These big shops. And so you're just getting one experience, whereas the real life is happening all around you, but you got nowhere to really find it. So that's the heart of what Loca is. We like to say we're crazy for local business.
That's a good one. We have a bumper sticker and swag to give.
Exactly.
Hey, I heard we're past the time here. I know you said you were about 20 minutes away from your breakfast taco as well. And I enjoyed that masterclass about marketing, which is I've heard about it is just psychology plus math, and as what marketing is defined by, or at least one definition. I was really curious to hear about stuff like you'd worked under Obama administration running Texas, venture capital fund to funds program. This was a huge topic. I was like, dude, I got to get Joe to talk about this. But, you've invested in startups, you've done these other things. I don't know if this is a good place for its kind of pause and maybe we can do a part 2 so you can get to your tacos. Does that sound something that's interesting or?
You're welcome to carry on. So, I mean, he's not here yet. So my tacos are not here yet. So that's why.
Well, I thanks for telling us about that and the thinking behind that and the experience. But tell us a little bit about working in this venture capital fund to funds program. Yeah. And first of all, I've learned about fund to funds a couple of years ago. I do the private credit fund for me, raising capital there. And I've got some LPs and single families for myself. But for anyone who's listening, like, what is fund to funds? What problem does that solve? And what the heck did you do here, in this venture capital fund? What did you do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to really understand it, you got to go back where it started. I was in Oregon. I was doing real estate. I got involved in a couple of startups and I really didn't know about startups. I was doing hard money loans in real estate because I understood real estate. And so I was able to access a lot of debt. And so I was like, okay, well, I can borrow a lot. So I might as well put it to work helping people do what I was doing. And then I invested in a bean farm. And oddly enough, and it did really well. And all I got was my loan back. And so it was sort of an eye opener to me where I was like, oh no, I only do a loan because that's real estate. I understand we only work in loans. I mean, imagine having like buying a house with someone. I was like, no, I do not want to buy a house with you and partner and you do the work. That sounds awful. I'd much rather loan it and take it back and I could do it. So that's what made logic. So then I started looking into like, what is this equity? How do you do equity? And I landed on angel investing. And I was like, oh, that's kind of what I'm doing. I am angel investing in these little startups. And so that's where I learned more about venture and like there's a whole industry and a structure. So That started my leg into starting a small fund. And by small in the venture world, 10 million is definitely a small fund.
Yeah.
And so I, I, I did a lot of consumer products, which everybody has at least one in their portfolio before they regret it. And so it's one of the selling products are hard, and you really need people who come from that industry, which I didn't know at the time. I was dumb money. I didn't know how to help them. I was investing and sending them along their way, and they really need smart money to help guide them through, like,
Advise them.
exactly how you're going to move through a lot of these channels, how you get the co-packers, how you find I mean, I know because I've had a few I know enough to be dangerous because I've had to suffer through it, but
Yeah.
I am not an expert, so I would not do one of those again. And so understanding that field and coming in, went to Texas, and I was with the governor's office, and they manage a lot of money, about $2 billion. And so one of them was the startup fund. So this was another place where I had gotten into. I joined the local angel group here in Austin, Central Texas Angel Network. And so I was just active, a participant. And it doesn't take long to just use your entrepreneurial mind and say, this fund doesn't work very well. It doesn't make sense. And I was seeing it because you have a whole bunch of bureaucrats who are leading a fund. So the incentives are all messed up. And I'm seeing lots of deals that just don't make any sense. And I think that fund is the only fund in the world that's ever had to bring a check to a closing. Like, worst run fund ever. So it still is today, I think, marked as the worst fund that's ever been. But learning from that is I was part of the group that tried to kill that fund. And we killed it on the back of saying this doesn't make sense to have this as a state-run fund. That at that time, I had never, I'd been a small venture capitalist, but I'd not really, right? $10 million fund is like getting your feet wet. You're not inactive. So my argument was, the people who are running this are not hungry enough. They're getting a salary. These are not hungry entrepreneurs to run a fund. And we need to shut this down. And this is where I'd fallen into this whole world of fund of funds. And I was like, this needs to be a fund of funds if it's going to be anything, because at least we can take state money. I'm not pro putting a fund together by state money, but if it is, let's put it together effectively. Let's make that money be run by professionals who are hungry. And that's really what led. So in 2010, the Jobs Act, after really the 2008 Great Recession, if you will, there were a lot of interest rate spikes. LIBOR had shot up and created this huge issue for the governor's office and a lot of their funds. So I'd participate in this analysis to put it together. And so that led me to managing these funds, of which when the 2010 Jobs Act offered almost $50 million to Texas, oddly enough, the governor was running for office at the time. So it put him in a bit of a bind because it was the governor's offices of which we're going to claim the money. So in a meeting, which is, gone, I can talk about now, but it was, all right, we're not sending it back, but I can't keep it. So that left me knocking on doors throughout the Texas, cabinet of who's willing to take this money and me and, try to do this fund. So Commissioner Staples, he was at the Department of Agriculture. Great guy. Todd Staples, great guy. Understood the general sense, but I remember my first meeting after he said, okay, well, we'll take it. I don't know what this is and how it fits in the Department of Agriculture, which it didn't, but he took it. First meeting with Commissioner Staples after it fully migrating over, Governor Perry and if you remember, at the time, it wasn't Senator Romney, but now Senator Romney were going up against each other. So Perry's campaign had decided now they could clearly use this term. So they started coining him vulture capitalism. They said, he's a vulture capitalist. And that was my first meeting. Todd Staples was like, great. What did Perry just send me? So he's like, landed him. He's like, is this going to beat me up in my own campaign? Are we vulture capitalists? So that was my very first meeting, was when that came out. So we had to walk through like, no, we're going to create. And what we ended up creating was a program for on the state side. We pay no management fee. So if you're a typical fund of funds, you're going to normally pay at least 2 to 2.5% management fee a year. And then your carried interest is an 80-20 split. So the 20 is going to be going to the operating general partner of the fund of which you invest in, and you'll get 80%. And so what that means is, let's say we invest $20 million into their fund, then you're going to be paying, around, $200,000 to $400,000 to operate this thing on an annual basis. And then they're going to have to return your 20 million, right? So they'll return of capital. So they'll return your 20 million. After they return the 20 million, then whatever profits are left, you keep 80% of it, and they're going to keep 20. And so their objective is to try to make as much as you can. And in those funds, they try, they're looking for a 10x if you're in a 10-year horizon fund. If it's a private equity fund, then you're looking at more a 3-year horizon and a 3x. So it just depends on the fund, and there's lots of funds in between and strategies. For us, we wanted to focus on emerging managers. In Texas, Austin was the heart of most of venture capital, and there wasn't much going. Most of it came out of this emerging tech fund, which was really grants because they were so poorly run. Austin Ventures had an office here, but they were really doing large private equity deals. So for anyone who remembers Austin Ventures, they don't exist. They still exist. They just rebranded because everybody thinks we're doing venture still. But once you raise so much money, you have to write big checks. So there was a group out of Austin Ventures, a couple of groups actually, that wanted to spin off and do a fund, but they were struggling because their focus was Austin. Their focus was Texas. And we only made up less than 1% of venture dollars at the time. And now we pretty dominantly are around 8%. And that's what's weird. As much as we talk about Austin, Silicon Valley still makes up 50%, between 40 and 50%, depending on the year. So Austin's still not there, but it's becoming more. So we are trying to get with emerging managers and help them get started. And so with what we had, we could bring TRS, ERS, UTIMCO, Texas Trust. We could bring all them in the room. And the unique structure we said is like, listen, because we are an evergreen fund for the purpose of economic development, I can create a unique structure that benefits you all and benefits my purpose.
So what did that structure look like? So those are banks, right?
No, they're LP. They're your traditional LPs, right? They are retired. ERS is employment retirement systems. TRS is the teachers retirement system. Texas Trust is where all the Texas employees money sits. UTIMCO is about $20 billion. That's University of Texas system. They're endowment funds. So most of them are big endowment funds. Endowments. And they, make up a bulk of where it is. California has one that is the largest, and they set a lot of rules. So really, I was the alternative to what California has, trying to put together all the big players in Texas to say, listen, let's help our venture capital segment. You're investing in all these other states with all these other funds. Why aren't you doing something here in Texas?
So you rounded them up so they could invest in your fund so that
No. So good question. I rounded them up so they'd be in the same room. Be at the same meeting. They would invest separately, but I needed them to understand our structure, so why they would want to invest alongside us. And so the structure, the structure was, we're not going to pay a management fee. So of course they're like, not interested. Like, that's weird. We're going to have to pay your management fee. I'm like, yes. However, we don't have to be pari passu. So I need return of original capital. And then any deals of which we're in specifically are the only ones that we get carry on. And we're going to give 80% of the carry and only keep 20. And that was where everyone's like, oh, because as an LP, and just so everyone knows, an LP are the big institution. They invest in a venture fund. And a venture fund is a collective partnership, which is run by what's called the GP, the general partners, which is a separate entity. But those are what we call venture capitalists. They're these GPs managing this partnership of money. And so the LPs have easy, simple math where they can rate between their carried interest and their operating fee. And so they're like, whoa, I mean, yeah, we'll make way more money if we're allowed to keep the carry. And my objective was to get the money out and get it back so I can create another fund as fast as I can. So I'm not a retirement fund. And that's where we were able to create this unique dynamic where I'm saying, on behalf of the state taxpayers' money, I'm not going to pay a management fee because they gave me $50 million, and I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that $50 million becomes more but I'm not going to lose it on account of fees. So 50, we don't pay a management fee, and I got to get it back as soon as I can because the objective is economic development. So I'm trying to build more venture funds. And so the sooner you give it back, I can start another fund because 50 million is not very much in the world of LPs. So that's really the unique structure, is it brought all these large LPs to the table to say, we like this. Actually, if you do this, we'll be in on this deal because we'll pay the management fee. We get so much of their carry. I mean, if they're going to come in with 10, 20 million, I mean, that's huge for us. And that would actually assist the fund. So now these emerging managers are like, this is a great tool, because if you ever, raising a fund's hard to begin with. Raising fund 2 becomes easier if you get some of these larger institutional, because normally an emerging manager, their first fund is like a family office. And it's real fragmented. It's like a founder's first startup. When you get your first startup, you have a whole bunch of angels. You're like, 5,000, sure, I'll take it. You get this cap table that's got 100 people on it, just because you're trying to put a round together, and you may not have a name, or a lot of the institutional investors are just kind of quasi in. So you gotta go on what you can. So a lot of emerging managers are the same way. So to raise a second fund is really nice if you get one of them in, because it's them, and they can write endless checks. I mean, they can get bigger and bigger checks. So now a lot of the funds you see here in Texas are started out of, that what was referred to as the J4T Venture Fund, which isn't worth talking about by name. It wasn't invented to be something that was worth name. It's an LP for emerging managers. But yeah, very interesting structure. Unfortunately, it is very successful. There was one person, I say that one reporter, who wrote not a scathing, but she was writing her first article for what she thought later would be a scathing article, because she was following on the back of emerging tech. So she wrote that article about me and about the fund, and it's never had a follow-up, which is sad, because I wish it did have a follow-up, because it would be like, wow, actually, not only did this fund return all of its money and make a whole bunch of money and created thousands of jobs, but it did it at no cost to the taxpayer, of which they got. Now, the other part they would find out is, because it sat in Department of Agriculture, after I had left and actually joined a venture fund, they had an election, and the new agriculture commissioner decided, like, oh, this is great. It's an evergreen slush fund. And he put most of the money towards, like, it was like horse grants. Nothing to knock horses, but that's a lot of money to go give out to farm animals that could have really done a lot to tech. And so they squandered the entire program. It just they didn't understand it. It was like, just over time, it dissolved and went away. So that's the short history. It's a great program. I'm not advocating any state create a venture fund or a fund of funds, but if they do, then this is one they should do. What it's landed me on, from being with the governor's office and being under the Obama administration of sorts, is that I do have a knack for working in state funds. I now know it so well on how they put together financing, that if you are going to put public dollars to work, I am definitely a guy you should consult, or at least talk to, and get some ideas around of how to put it to work effectively, because you have to understand the state's perspective and how the state runs, as well as the private world. And so it's a unique dynamic that I went on to help. They sort of had another program that was created like that, and I went on to help them as much as I could, pro bono, just to assist in doing that. And most of it kind of got stuck under the Musk Doge products. So, but nonetheless, I'm not advocating, approving those funds. But if you do, then you should have someone like me help, because there are so many ways people have squandered this money in trying to create programs that they think are effective, and they're not. Like, you do need, in the end, you need people who are hungry. Who are wanting to put something to work. And if you think, like, oh, we got all this money, let's put it to work, and then it's the bureaucrats who are doing it, guaranteed you're going to have, if not corruption, you're going to have just absolute inefficiency. Working.
So I want to a lot of detail. You saw me. I was taking some notes and looking at some stuff. I'm like, I got to find this article. It'd be cool to maybe go
out of
find
Houston. I can't remember her name, but easy to find, right?
I'd love to maybe go in poker and be like, yeah, I had Joe on. You should
Mm,
maybe you want to do a follow up, you know?
yes, that would be good. It would be good.
Clipped. Got it.
Exactly.
Um, but so you talk about some of these other managers that have come up and some of these other funds that are still out there. The fund to fund that uh I know of is smaller checks writing into a bigger fund that goes in deploy. And as you were explaining this, it sounded like you had some of these different LPs, the endowments that were invest alongside you into some other fund, and I lost track of the structure on how that who is feeding into the bigger fund.
Yeah. Let me
And
let me
so
help. And mine isn't quite fair because I know in a real estate perspective they do fund to funds
yeah.
and same structure, but entirely different ballgame. The structure I just talked about is the big boys. So
Okay.
when you have the big boys writing checks, they're committing like 20 to $100 million in their fund, but it's the exact same structure. So what happens is you say, okay, fund of funds means I'm going to invest in someone else's initiative in the form. So what they're going to do, you're investing in a partnership, and your partnership for the most part is going to try to be pari passu. That means everybody has the same rules, but in the bigger boys, there's what are called side letters, and they turn out that nothing's pari passu. But in the smaller ones, everything should be pari passu and much more direct. So if you're doing a real estate fund, you have someone who comes in and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to buy and work on this whole property for this apartment complex. And so you're like, hey, I can get involved in this apartment complex in being part of this fund. So they're like, okay, great. So then you come in as a partner and you are now the LP. So you're writing, maybe you're only going to write a $50,000 check or $100,000 or something along those. So you're now the LP. You're the same as these big institutions I just talked about. You're at the table. There's going to be a lot more. Whereas in the venture world and the private equity world, you don't have as many partners because they're writing larger checks. But it's the same. It's the same thing. So let's say he's going to end up with like 50 partners, right? And when I say he, it could be she. I have to caveat they. Just got lectured how men are always sexist because they say he by default instead of, and women say they. So I'm trying to practice and I already failed. So
Well done, Joe.
they could put together what is called the general partner. So they're going to have two entities. They're going to have the general partnership, which is just made up of the operators of the fund. They're the ones who are going to be doing the work on this apartment complex. And then the partnership, the fund itself, is the partnership of everyone who's investing, of which that general partner may not even invested in. That happens all the time. They're managing the fund, they're going to run it, but they don't got a lot of cash, but they're willing to do the work, right? So that happens. So then you come into the fund, exact same structure, exact same rules. You all put together a partnership. You're now going, you have your partnership agreement. You have, all that you're doing is now inside the fund. The general partner, their agreement is to say, okay, well, I'm going to manage this fund over here that we've all created. And in exchange, I need to operate. So they're going to charge between 2 and 2.5%. So this is where you put in your 50 to 100,000, and you're going to be sent a bill for the management fee on an annual basis, and they're going to manage this fund. And then before you invested, they're going to have like some kind of thesis. And their thesis in this case is like, well, I'm going to build this apartment complex. And this apartment complex, it's going to be approximately this, so you're going to have a general idea in the beginning, even though it's subject to change. But what you're not going to allow is they can't just take this and then all of a sudden they like, I'm going to pay for my summer home in, some, in the Virgin Islands, like that part. Nope, we didn't talk about that. So you do have this thesis, and venture's the same way. They're going to say, I'm going to focus on tech, and I'm going to keep it on B2B, and I might have a theme like I'm a real estate tech or something like that. So they're going to have a focus, and their LP expects them to follow through with that focus. And if they're going to change, most likely they're going to have to get permission from their LPs in the exact same way that a real estate fund would be. And so they're structured. They operate in exactly the same way. They build this apartment complex. When they sell that and they could have two. It could be like, I'm going to own and operate this apartment complex for 10 years or something, right? So that could be, and then we'll refinance it, everybody get it. That's not that normal in that structure. Normally it'd be, I'm going to build it and sell it, because when they sell it, all of those monies come back and you get your portion of it. And so that's the reason you invest. I invest 50 to 100,000 and I get all my capital returned first. So let's say the apartment complex is a $10 million deal and you put in 50, you're going to get your $50,000 back. You've been paying management fees. So you got to, add that in, but you're going to get your original capital back. And then after that, everybody's going to get money based on what is called a waterfall. And on the smaller deals, it's really easy because it's traditionally pari passu in a real estate deal. When you get to the big boys, it's much more waterfall driven. And what people will say the waterfall, what it means is it's the opposite of a waterfall. When I say that, think about a waterfall, it's like flowing water, right? But all the water ultimately flows down. Well, that's not how this waterfall works. Imagine it taking all the water as it goes down. So there's only a few droplets at the end. That's really, it's a reverse waterfall. And so people will fight to get their money first. Or they'll fight to say, okay, well, I want a guaranteed interest, working preferred. Things like this, preferences become the stack. And so everybody will get various money. And then, who's at the bottom will ultimately get the remaining. So it doesn't mean you don't get profits. It's after everybody gets back their capital, there's, a little bit of who gets it first, because let's say the deal goes kind of south and you don't make as much as you planned. Well, then that becomes an important segment of like how you're going to unwind this thing. And so the same exact thing in real estate happens in venture. A small venture fund is about 100 million. Once the venture fund hits to about 300 million, they're really becoming a private equity fund. And a private equity fund is, 1 to 5 billion. And the reason they become a private equity fund is it's really a matter of check size. And so you could define yourself, if you're in real estate, you could define yourself like, what check size do you write? And that helps you define yourself as what size LP you are and where what fund of funds you should be operating in, because they all are the same. So as a venture capitalist, if I'm trying to deploy $1 billion, well, same as a real estate fund, you're going to have what's called your investment period and your time horizon. Your investment period is the period of which you're going to put this money to work. And so if it's the apartment complex, you're like, I'm going to build it over the next 2 years. So then you're going to have a capital call. And so that means you've committed 50,000, but you don't have to put it all in right now. So you may have the first capital call is like 10,000. You're like, okay, I write me 10,000 and I got to pay my management fee on that. And then they're going to have another capital call for the next 20. So you're in 30 now. So you send that and then the final one, right? So as they build, they're going to require this commitment from you from a committed fund. And it's the same thing on the big ones, but they'll put together that investment period is the period of which they're going to deploy all the cash. The horizon is, in tech world, it's much longer than what would be known in the real estate world. And that's because the risk rewards are very different. In real estate, you're like, hey, if we make a 2x, yes. In venture, that is like you failed. Like that's you're a dead fund. So in venture, their target is a 10x, but their horizon is about 10 years. And that means they're going to deploy this capital. They may have a 2 to 3 year investment period. So that's when they're going to put the money to work. But then they got to sit and wait and let it bake another 7 years. And on the smaller real estate, they're like, whoa, I'm not going to put my money in and wait 10 years. But real estate is low risk because you can actually see it going up. It's a physical asset that you can get back. And so your return is much lower. You're looking at, cap rates are really low and you're just trying to diversify and get larger deals and get a slightly better cap rate. So it's the exact same structure, exact same metrics. The only trade-off is your check size. How can you leverage that into it and not be the person at the end of the waterfall? So that's why you stay out of the venture deals. And then, of course, your risk and rewards. And, if you're like, I don't want to be stuck for 10 years. Well, the bigger, higher up you go, the more you're going to be locked into this fund because they're set up. If you're an employee retirement fund, well, you have a long-term horizon to look at something. You can invest in something for 10 years if it's going to bring you 10x. You're like, happy to do it. I need to deploy that money. So, but then you see, as I was going with the venture funds, when you're writing a check, so on the smaller ones, it's all going to go into this apartment building. But when you're having to manage $1 billion, when you write a check, I mean, it's hard to write venture checks of like $500,000. I mean, you're going to have to see a lot of deals and talk to a lot of small startups to make that work, and it just won't. So now you're forced to write $20 million checks, and $20 million checks are the bigger private equity, and that's how you're forced into the private equity space and that's what happened to Austin Ventures. They started small, but pretty soon they saw they were writing bigger and bigger checks, raising more money, and next thing they're like, we're not even in venture anymore. Now we're totally just, our check sizes is 200 million. Yeah. And startups aren't taking a $200 million check. It just puts you in a different industry, but the structure's all the same.
Are you in this case, like you're talking about with the apartment complex, or with LPs coming in and investing in a fund to go build the apartment complex, as an example, there's another structure where it's, the LPs will invest in the fund, the quote unquote GP of this fund will then deploy into a bigger fund where like the check size has to be, like it is 1 million for that fund level into I don't know, 100 million. I don't know. Probably wouldn't be, because they would want bigger check sizes, but maybe a 10 million check deployed. Is that you also see that type of structure in the VC side?
Not in the VC. You would never see something like that on the venture side. That's more on the real estate side, and that really started. I mean, it's sort of the REITs, when the REITs came around, these real estate investment trusts. So we did a couple of neighborhoods when I was younger, working on the real estate, where we were trying to create our own private REITs. And that's where we stumbled upon like, hey, a lot of people are doing these fund structures to kind of work with these. I was like, really? I was like, that's weird. So they were creating, like you said, it would be a microfund where you only have to put in $1,000 or $2,000. And $1,000 or $2,000 into a fund, where then they're going to make one fund for $100,000, and then they're going to take that fund, and its purpose is then to be a fund of funds again and invest in one, that's trying to put together 20 million. And right. I mean, I like them, but that's a lot of work. That's just so much work. I just can't believe. On the venture side, they would have zero tolerance for something of that nature, just because
too small. The
dollars they're looking after are so much larger that when you put together all your LP meetings and all your LP stuff, it's a lot of work. And so it's like a startup. If you take in angels where they're going to, if you crowdsource it, where you're bringing in like investments of the size of $50, dude, I mean, your cap table is nuts. I mean, it's just like, that's so much work that it's just unbelievable. So yeah, it does happen on the real estate side. I'm always cautious because I never participated in them. I did see them, but I saw so many real estate scams going around at the time that I've never trusted them. So hopefully there are some that are honest and they're working and people like it. I know there's a company that started up to try to take out this market, and they've been very successful, and that's Roofstock. They've grown really well. Beasley, and he came out of running a REIT, single family rentals, and he was starting to see a lot of these out there, and he's like, man, we really need to put something together for people who only have like $5,000-$10,000 who want to invest in a piece of real estate collectively but don't have it. So then on their platform, it's really nice. They've made quite a few acquisitions, so you will buy a piece of the real estate, so you could own a house with 20 to 100 other people, and then they'll manage it for you. And it's almost like buying a small stock. So I would say that one is probably more the realistic one. When I get into these, I mean, it's good to participate in real estate, but this goes back to like the basic theory of being lazy, and that is like the passive income of life. And the house that you're in is where you need to start. And so a lot of people get into these funds, and I think they just get so excited about like, I want to be a real estate investor and talk about all these cool mechanisms and structures I'm in. And to me, there's zero excitement about that. What would be really exciting is if you actually had passive income. So the house you live in has the best opportunities available. So every time I had a guy about a year ago talk to me all about this deal. He's going to buy in similar structure. He's going to buy into this apartment complex. And I was like, do you own your house? He's like, well, no, I'm renting. But I'm like, you will make by far the best return on owning your house, even in this market. because every 2 years you get a $250,000 as an individual. If you're married, you get $500,000 tax exemption. And then if you look at the cost right now, so I'm doing this with my two sons. My two sons, I can't believe this, but my daughter just turned 18. She's a senior. I have 4 kids and they're all adults. It makes me feel so old. But my two sons, I've talked to them and I've convinced them. I was like, listen, I have a company still in Oregon, and we're doing lots of building, and we're doing a lot of these ADU units, these alternative dwelling units, where you can buy a house and then you could add 3 more units onto it. And so it's become a popular thing. We're like, hey, we're definitely the group to try to put these in, so we slap those in. So when I say I mean, yes, I finance it, but I don't. I go there once a year and look at it and see some pictures every once in a while. But I do all the finance side. So as I looked at all the finances and having a background that I do, where I know what ultimate supplies are, I mean, I've had to build all these things so I can do it. And when I see a roof costing us $45,000 to have a new roof on, and I know I can buy every single piece of all of those materials for less than $5,000, that tells you where all the costs in real estate are right now. They are all in labor. So 1,500 square foot home. My sons, I'm trying to convince both, they're going to build the same floor plan to keep it efficient. So we got the design down. We got it. It's basically a square with a roof and it has a bonus truss. But as we've gone through it all, we're going to put up 1,500 square foot. We're going to do all the work. So they get me for free. But all in, it's 90,000, not including the land. That's a $90,000 house.
Nice.
That same house will sell for $500,000.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy. So I take that to anyone. Like, if you're doing something, go work on your own house. I'm not saying if you have a great house, go put in a new kitchen and a new bathroom. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you find an old fixer-upper or you want to build your own house, I mean, put some equity into your own home. It will by far pay off dividends than playing in all these crazy real estate structures to get fancy and do lots of things. I would say, focus on your own house. As I think it's the Bible that says it, get your own house in order.
Yeah.
So I think that's in Genesis, right? I have no idea. I'm throwing that out to sound like I do. But, that's really the name of the game. It's like, focus on your own house. When you get your own house, you will find that you can have investment value that creates much faster, where you're not doing these $1,000 or $2,000 investments. All of a sudden, if you can get your own house figured out, you can branch that into a rental really fast with real capital. And next thing you know, you're sitting on $200,000 to $300,000 in equity to invest in. And now you're much more concerned about, where you put things. It's funny when someone has $300,000 that they've had to work to get, and someone has $2,000, they invest it very differently. So the $2,000 like, oh, I'll do this fund. I'll do this fun thing. $300,000, like, I'm not putting that in a fund. Are you crazy? And so all of a sudden they're more focused on what they're going to invest in. And that's how they should have been the whole time. They should, think in a lazy mind. Like, I don't want to have a stress about this. I don't want to lose. I put a lot of work into it. Like, how can I, enjoy this while I work on it, and that, have naps here and there. And that is definitely building your own house, like putting it somewhere else. You don't know where it is. You're hoping it comes back. Somebody else is relying on it. That becomes a strategy for very wealthy. The reason it's a strategy for very wealthy is because if someone is efficient on how they live, right? And that is just thinking lazy, those Aboriginal ideas where I'm like, well, I don't need to buy any clothes.
Sure.
If I go to Academy and I buy 5 pairs of shoes on the discount rack every year and I just keep them as I use them, which I do, I'm cheap. But if you do these things, you can live really a basic life, right? So you have passive income. So really, you're a portfolio manager. When you become a portfolio manager, you have a different problem, because I cannot efficiently go and build houses and make the benefits like I'm offering to my sons.
Right.
Because it's just too much to put to work. My check size is so large, I can no longer do these smaller ones. That's when funds help me, because the small margins I'm trying to gain now, because there's too much to manage at scale, that's when these funds really make sense, because I need just a little bit of help is beneficial, because it's now not me working, it's my money is working for me, and I have to put it to work. And sometimes they pay okay and sometimes they don't. But that's really where these funds make sense, and they work really effective, and there's a structure for them. And And I would advise people to separate those versus these weird structures I see every once in a while. There were so many scams that came out of 2008 that now every time I see one, I'm like, something smells fishy. So
let me get your take on this, because investing 2,000 into this or that, no, like totally. But just to jog your memory on, what I was telling you a little bit about the podcast and the audience before we hit record here, is that tech professionals that would be accredited, right? And many people may be renting because they'll live into markets where the houses probably are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and they probably are thinking, maybe I don't want to go build my own house, Joe. And they can agree with the because there's skill sets involved too, right? And de-risking whatever you're doing, including building a house, is a skill set.
That's fair.
And so if they are renting for less than, let's say, 60%, right, of a mortgage payment,
which in Austin, oddly enough, it could happen right now. I mean, rents have come down a lot,
right? And so but they're thinking ownership still makes sense, because that means I can cash flow, including investing in something where they might be one of those $50,000 checks, where it's safer on the risk return and they're getting something back. Do you still have this the same? What do you think about them from a strategic perspective? Because they're thinking, I can make money over here. I can invest these funds, have my money work for me while I still draw a tech salary, so to speak. And as those earn, I get more streams of income making me money. Maybe I go find a place where I relocate to a smaller market, or I do want to, go buy a house in the market I'm in. But what you're thinking about that type of individual who does want to make these investments and doesn't want to, may not own their own house because the economics on a monthly basis doesn't make sense?
I mean, it's really what do you want, right? I mean, that's an individual's choice, because there's two things. If you got this great tech, I mean, you just described everybody in Austin, right? You got these great tech jobs. They're making a ton of money. They're like, oh, starter home's like $1 million now, so I don't really want to get involved in that. And I got this paycheck that's so easy, and it's way more money than I can spend. So I'll just start investing some of this in all these weird funds, and they start doing all these things, right? So they create all this drama for themselves because they start investing it in all these things that they kind of understanding, they're getting to it, right? But then and that could be their objective. They're like, listen, I just want to, be low key. If they're trying to create passive income, and that's a lifestyle investor, because a lifestyle, they're just trying to support their lifestyle. So they are not the scalable investor. Because if they were the scalable investor, they would say, okay, I actually need to create an asset so my money is working for me. Right now, if I lose my job, well, guess what? My entire investment amount that I'm paying into this annuity doesn't exist anymore because I lost my job. So my cash flow is gone. And now I need to actually use the base capital of that investment to live on. So they're just building a savings account. I support savings accounts. They're great. But again, they're lifestyle investors because they're just trying to support their lifestyle. If they really want to build passive income, then they should just take this market's no different than it was 20 years ago, than 30 years ago, than 50 years ago. It's the same market. It's just different dynamics. And what I mean by that is, even in Austin, where it's $500,000, right? Well, you can easily partner up. Houses now in Austin, Portland, Eugene, in fact, the entire state of Oregon, Denver, because my son goes to school in Denver. ADUs are everywhere. We have a housing shortage. So soon it's going to be all over the country that people are pushing ADUs. So you can get creative in a number of different ways. ADUs are limited to like 800 square feet. They can just pop in anything. So if you have a property, I'm trying to think of which one is the smallest, but I think it's Eugene. 2,000 square feet is all you need to put in an ADU.
Nice.
So if you think about a piece of property that's 5,000 square feet, that's not big. You are talking about a small piece of property, and to think you could put a duplex on it. You can build another unit. An ADU is very small. If you were to hire someone to build it, it's very efficient. You got to get into land. So to start thinking like this and start even taking on, say, if you're dating someone. I mean, I'm not saying this is a great way to, could be a great way to end a relationship. I don't know, but you can definitely find partners who want to do this because these are short-term things. So you go in and you're doing it together, where you say, all right, let's buy this collectively and let's put the ADU on it. And just doing that, you're probably going to make like $150,000. And that's not, and you not doing any of the work, because you're taking the efficiency and the value add to that property. And property, oddly enough, no matter, I mean, if you really go to buy a house, it's not the size of the property. You have to get really big to find huge variances in property sizes. It's the house, right? And how new it is. This is really where the value and pricing comes, right? So if you cut a property in half, you haven't killed the front house's value by much.
Sure.
So for example, let's just say, you know, we got a 5,000 lot here in Austin. The house is 2,500 square foot. It's all the way to the front. And right now it's selling for like 800,000. And you say, hey, I'm going to cut $2,500 off. Well, it's probably worth 790 now. That's what's crazy. And now it's still one property because it's only going to have an ADU. I just mean that house alone as a sale, the original house that's on the property hasn't lost much value when you're going to carve off almost half of it, of which that house can no longer use, because you're going to build an ADU on it.
So do you mean the house, or do you mean the property? Because I was tracking that it was
the house.
The property.
The house.
Okay.
But you got to remember, I mean, this is where it does get confusing. So go through it again. Like if you're driving by, you see this house, 2,500 square feet on one piece of property, and right now it goes for 800,000. And you say, I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy it for 800,000. And then you put a fence right down almost the middle where you give 2,500 over here, right? And now you have just that sleeve, right? Well, believe it or not, if you were to actually subdivide it, because now you can with condo rules, so you could actually sell that house, you'll probably still sell it for 790 to 800, even though you've cut half of the yard off.
And go live in the ADU type of thing.
And now you build this ADU on the other side, and the ADU is now worth, you know, 400,000 and cost you $200,000 to, you know, put up. And that's really the magic, is that right now there's a lot of efficiencies with lower yards that you can gain on all of this, the ADUs that are going around. So that's literally what we're doing. So if you build them, and it all depends on the ADU. If the house sits on the line, we connect them in some regards. And then you have to build firewalls, and you have to do it in advance, but you can partition them off as condos. And so you can sell them individually, just like a house. And that's where, boom, you're back to selling this thing for, you know, for the amount of value you would think you would lose in cutting off the property. It's not really there. The value is really in what is called the improvement, which is the house, the thing that's most depreciable. And so with that kind of efficiency in this market, why isn't everybody jumping on this? I mean, it's a great opportunity to do this, even if you went to someone else. And this is where I think you get really inventive. And I've known two guys to do this, and they talk to someone else and like, listen, what if I build an ADU on your property and we get it all set up, and I buy it like a condo after I build it, and you can put all that together in, you know, a land sale contract. And that way they're like, listen, I'll come in, and whatever we sell it for, you will get, you know, the value. So now they haven't even had to pay for the land.
Right.
They did have to pay for the building, but they've cut even more of the costs out. And so they've now ended up on a piece of property that they live in for 2 years. And in many states, the reason you want to live in it for 2 years is you can get away with being your own general contractor. And so even if you're not going to do any of the building, you can do a lot of the managing and save yourself, you know, that's 20% of the cost, often between 10 and 20%, just being the general manager, which is nothing more than what you end up doing anyways. Every homeowner becomes a general manager because they get so frustrated, but they don't realize they're paying someone else whose job it is to do that. So there's all these little ways of getting into real estate. But once you have it, you get this benefit of living in it 2 of the last 5 years, and you sell it, you get the tax exemption, primary residency, homestead tax exemption. And it's just great. It should be increased, in my opinion. It has not been adjusted for inflation. And, you know, when it was, you know, 10 years ago, $500,000 was amazing. Now it's still good. It's still worth it. But when you see the average home selling for 470 in this country, it does need to go up a little bit. So
Yeah.
I think it's great because it's designed to be just what it is. It helps you build that original wealth. You should try to pay off your house. I think it's something that, it's the core. And if you're going to really start investing in all these alternatives, you need something that is generating passive income. And that means it's working for you. And that's the only way to do it, is you have to ultimately create an asset, and the asset has value, and it is now working for you. If you're and that's where I say it's just personal preference. If you're a tech guy making a lot of money, if you have a lot of money and you can save up, you can get there in the same fashion. Like if you're working, 5 years, you ultimately get a nut egg and you're like, oh, okay, I can finally buy a house. You can do that, but it's through savings. You're not, that's really what it is. You're not building passive income. You're saving until you can buy something of which has passive income. And then the alternative is actually getting involved. Now, there's also your own situation. So not everyone can go and buy a house right now. And so sometimes you need to do savings in order to get there. So that's also understood. That
were you labeling, and I use that word situationally, contextually here, if someone were to invest that 50,000 into, what have you, a apartment, that type of fund, or if it would be, an oil and gas fund or something like that, as an example. Is that what you were thinking about, the quote unquote savings? I was trying to understand what you were saying there.
Well, I just mean you were talking about the tech entrepreneur who makes a lot of money but doesn't own his own house. He wants to rent because he's like, the outweigh. So I'll just take my money and put it. But if you're investing from your income from a job,
yes,
then it's really savings. You are saving money, right? You're putting it away, you're saving it, and you're trying to, do something. But until it becomes something where it can actually, generate its own cash flow, it is just savings. It's just a fancy way of putting it away in savings. So you create a savings account pay different interest rates, and that's all you're doing, right? I mean, if you look at an annuity opts in a couple of ways. You can put the annuity up front to where it's now paying you. That's owning an asset. If you own your house and you're working on it, it's a fixed time, the price you paid for it. And now the appreciation is going. So that's the annuity. The snowball's working in your favor. It's a piece of capital now working for you. So it is passive income. If your job is where the cash flow is coming from, then that's the opposite. You're making a payment into the annuity. Because if you lose your job, the annuity's cash flow is dead, and it's only growing now on what it is. It's just a leftover savings account. And so you have to take what's in that savings account and put it. And that could be, you can invest in lots of things from there. But I just mean, and ultimately it could become, a huge egg, but you'd have to work for quite a few years to save.
Isn't that so? The concept of it being the savings is put the money somewhere, and it's not.
I just meant, as far as the tech entrepreneur makes a lot of money, if he had two choices, and he could say, okay, well, I'll just put money away and save it, and that's how I'll involve myself. That's savings. If they wanted to take it and say, okay, I'm actually going to create passive income, and they have that same amount. Let's say they net out $5,000 a month. Let's say that's their savings amount. So they could do two things. They could say, I put $5,000 in a savings account,
right,
and wait till it becomes $200,000.
Okay.
Or they could take that $5,000 and use it as a payment of buying a house at a fixed value.
Sure.
Those are two forms of building something. One of them is an asset that has a fixed value that is going towards passive income. The other one is just holding an amount. And you could invest it in various stock, which you can sell. Those are all considered just fancy ways of a savings account.
So, okay, that's what I was clarifying, and that they're just quote unquote fancy ways of savings account, because if they're like, you're like making the analogy, equating that all, like putting your money somewhere, each of these accounts all have different levels of interest rate, right?
Your treasury account's going to be your most safest.
savings account.
Right. And that is the savings account. It's really just buying the US bond tagged to the US dollar. So if you ask Warren Buffett, he's been parking like something like 50 billion in treasuries, which is just a savings account, because he's like, well, I make 5% interest. Why wouldn't I? And so that's just savings. So any of those, you can get your money within 3 days. You're not making a lot. 5% on 5,000 a month isn't it's small amount. It's not really building the passive income you're trying to build that you can from, alternatives. So that's really the difference.
Got it. Yeah, I have a couple follow-up questions there, but I don't want to be, asking a whole bunch of small things here. Listen, we've been going for a bit here, dude. So I really appreciate it. I hope your tacos are there.
Yes.
And Joe, I really appreciate it, man. Tell me, where can people find more of Loca, wherever you want people to connect more with you and learn from you? Obviously, there's a ton of stuff to learn. So thanks for being here, man.
No, pleasure. Loca.us. Look it up, loca.us. You can find there, and you can find me probably the easiest on Twitter, Joe_Edgar_. And so yeah, check us out, Loca.us, LOCA.us.
And I'll make sure it's in the show notes as well, so you can go there and learn more about Joe and his team. And dude, have a wonderful morning. Enjoy some time with your family. Appreciate you sharing your life and your experience. And take care, my friend.
Same. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Path to Passive. We love connecting with our listeners and those on the path to architecting their wealth and improving their lives. Feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to see in future episodes. Get in touch with us through email or Instagram. See you next week for a new episode.